Hi, this is Robert Kiyosaki, and you're listening to Capital Hacking. This is the most important thing you can listen to today.
Here's the one.
I have a dream.
With great power comes great responsibility.
I could do this all day.
This is it. Don't get scared now.
They may take our lives, but they'll never take our freedom.
Cinderella story out of nowhere.
It's in the hole. That the only thing we have to fear is fear itself.
Capital Hacking begins in 3, 2, 1.
Welcome back to the big show. Josh McCown here. Cannot wait to dig into this episode with John Edwin.
Man, I'll tell you, if you guys are just listening, Josh was just jogging in place and he's wearing a suit. He was so fired up to come in today. We are level 10 energy with Brad Stegall. He did an amazing job. He's over 10x'd his real estate in just a few years and got a partner, talks about mentorship. This show is full of great information.
There's a deep dive in here that will teach you how to level up your real estate negotiations, how you can really, he said he bought $1 million project with 5% cash. Wait a second. That's impossible, but it's not if you do it the Brad Stegall way.
Let's go.
You kidding me? We got Brad Stegall on the phone, John. We're on the podcast.
Yes, we do. Yes, we do. Now, Brad, is it Stegall or Stegall?
Stegall.
Stegall. Okay.
You
So
want to
yeah.
do Steven Seagal, don't you, bro?
That would be better. Yeah.
Brad, I have said your name incorrectly for the past few years because the three of us are in GoBundance all together, and I always called you Stegall, but it's Stegall. Okay. Well, Brad, take us away.
Yeah.
Give our listeners a little background on who you are.
Yeah, so I'm from Peoria, Illinois, right in the middle of the state, born and raised around here. And the plan was to move to the bigger city, which is Peoria, and then launch from there and go do something in a bigger market. And started doing investing in Peoria, and real estate's been so good to us here, we just never left. And so I was a student of Rich Dad Poor Dad, read that book when I was in my late teens. And in the book, he says, if you're going to buy your first property, do a duplex, live in one side, rent out the other, before Bigger Pockets was talking about house hacking. And so back in 2004, that was my first deal. And then a year later, I moved into my next duplex. A year after that, I moved into my next. And this was all along the same time that I was working a day job. I was a professional salesperson selling advertising on radio and TV stations. And so it gave me that flexibility to do the real estate on the side and do my main career as well. And so that's how it grew. Very slow in the beginning, and ended up with about 28 units, and just kind of managed those for a while until I got to a different period of my life where I decided I wanted to have even greater growth.
Well said,
Awesome.
buddy. And by the way, what a great background, right, John? And if you're listening and you're young, looking for a career, sales of marketing sponsorship, I don't know if that industry is as good as it once was, meaning, terrestrial radio and billboards and stuff like that. But how much better of a training could you possibly have in all the economic, levers of business, right? You're teaching people how to help grow their business by saying, if you advertise, you'll get 2,000 eyeballs and the eyeballs will do this. So you're learning it, you're hustling. And how long did you do it? Did you do it more than a few weeks?
Oh, yeah, I did it for 20 years.
So you must have gotten through the grind.
Yeah.
You went
yeah.
through the meat grinder.
Uh-huh.
Pride damn near killed you, and then you got out of it. So
Yeah.
congrats.
And again, to do that well, you've got to learn about the customer's business. So not only are you learning about the grind, you're learning about marketing, you're learning all these different types of businesses and what it takes to be successful.
That's what I'm saying. It's like an MBA, because you're digging into the restaurants and the hotels and stuff, but you're digging into, I don't know, like HVAC companies and stuff too.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Love it.
For sure.
Now, Brad, it sounds to me like your first few years in real estate, you said you bought a duplex, lived in it, then you bought another one the next year and another one the next year. And then there was this lily pad effect. How many doors do you have now?
So my business partner and I are up to 500 doors now.
Woo.
And so, the massive growth has all taken place since COVID. I was doing things on my own. I was a big fan of Dave Ramsey. And so he always has the phrase, the only ship that won't sail is a partnership. And so I decided I was just going to do this on my own for the rest of my life. That way I wouldn't have to worry about disagreements with a business partner. And so in 2020, I decided to partner with my mentor at the time, to do our first apartment deal. And so I went from 40 units in 2020 to now where collectively between the two of us, we have over 500. And it's just been some crazy, massive growth that never would have happened without me of overcoming that idea of never having a partner.
Yeah, yeah. And let's talk about the mentorship a little bit. Can you shine a little bit of light on your mindset on mentorship?
So I was a sales guy, right? So I knew what it took to, I don't know, create relationships with people. And, you had a business owner out there that you wanted to sell advertising to. So you had to become friends with that person and get some favorable attention. And so I was listening to Bigger Pockets podcasts all the time, and they talk about what it took to find a mentor. And so I decided to figure out who the baller was in my community when it came to apartment buildings. And this guy's name kept coming up, Mike Goodet. And so I decided that I was going to figure out whatever it took to see where he was going to be and just put myself in front of him. So I'd go to landlord association meetings. There was a ribbon cutting at the property management company that he used. So I went to the ribbon cutting. And next thing you know, like we got to know each other, started going to lunch every once in a while. And then every single time he knew I worked a day job, but every time I went to go look at a piece of property, he'd be like, hey, Mike, I'm going to look at this duplex today. Hey, Mike, I'm going to look at this 10 unit today. Hey, Mike, I'm doing this. Hey, Mike, I'm doing that. And over time, he's like, wow, this guy's a hustler. Like he really does what we're talking about. And so after gaining that favorable attention with him back in 2020, before COVID all broke out, there was a deal that came across his desk that was too good to be true, but he was too busy to do it. And so instead of letting the deal go, he called me and said, hey, I'm too busy on this other project. I just learned about this deal that we could buy at a great price. Do you want to partner with me? And so that's where it all began, and that's how and why.
Wow.
I like
That's
it actually.
incredible.
Is that why you talk about mentorship so much? And is that when you describe mentorship, I've heard it in several different ways. How do you describe mentorship?
Well, there's different, just like with many things, it depends.
Yeah,
I did some
that's right.
mentorship programs that I paid for back in the early days. I paid for a Rich Dad Poor Dad mentorship program
Okay.
where I did that for an entire year. There's another mentorship program that I paid for where I just paid for materials so that I could consume those materials at my own pace so that I could learn. But then this mentorship was more a matter of just in my phone for the longest time, it said Mike Goodet, my hero. So it's who's that guy that you look up to that you want your life to be more like someday, and then have a relationship with that person and learn from them, watch what they do, and duplicate what they're doing.
Yeah, I've heard Tony Robbins many times talking about, finding somebody and mirroring what they're doing. Don't worry about reinventing the wheel, but find someone in an industry and that you can replicate. You have a property management company. How did that come about?
It came about out of necessity, unfortunately. In the area that we live, we had a property manager, and they weren't doing things the way that we wanted them to be done. And after just beating our head against the wall and realizing that no matter what we did, they weren't going to do it that way, it was Mike actually that said, we're either going to sell everything and be done with this because it's driving me nuts, or we're going to start our own property management company. And I came kicking and screaming. I didn't want to start another business. I had just left my day job a year ago, and I was taking this passive investing, like all this, not having to work and just having real estate fund my lifestyle was the way that I was going to go. But in hindsight, he was right. It's what we needed to do. And now we're 2.5 years into things, and we've, the machine's running pretty well, and it feels good because now we have ultimate control.
And with the property management company, I know you guys have 500 some doors together. Do you take on other people's portfolios?
No, because we don't like property management. We just do it because we have to. So we're not going to do it for anybody else.
Well, talk
And
to
we
me about
use-
that. So how did you reverse engineer it? What do you think you're doing differently? Obviously, you're the owners, so clearly you have more focus and energy and intensity. But what do you think you're doing differently and better?
We call people back.
Is there any tech enablement there, maybe, or just good
It
old
sounds so simple, but anybody that's got a third-party property manager, whoever's done this before, it's like just answering the phone is half the battle because these property managers, there's no margin in it, so they can't afford to staff up properly. And so when a property manager is expected to run this business off of 5 to 10% of the rental amounts that they're collecting each month, and the number of people that they should have in order to do it properly, it just doesn't make sense.
Right.
But we collect 100% of it. And so we can hire a little, we can overstaff what most people would do for a property management company so that we can drive revenue and manage our expenses more effectively. So to do a renewal for us as property owners to increase $100 per unit times 500 units, that's drastic.
Mm-hmm.
But for a property manager to do that and to hire another person to oversee just renewals, they're not going to do it. They only get 7% of that renewal amount, $7 a month. Who cares?
Wow. Yeah, you're absolutely right. And then regarding like your contractors and everything like that, I'm guessing you have a large vendor list.
We have a large vendor list. We have full-time maintenance people that are employed by us, and we've got 2 full-time painters that are employed by us. So again, it gives us more control, because if we have a vacancy that happens unexpectedly and we need to turn it really fast, we can pull all of our team off and go do it. Whereas when you're working with a bunch of subcontractors, it's harder to move that quickly.
I mean, it's compelling, and the volume is one great thing about Brad. I think you and I had a great conversation at one of the Go Abundance events, that the math really works in Peoria, and other people have caught on, but you guys moved quick during COVID. And I'll let you teach people what the math is. Okay, I want to ask you to teach them. And number 2, because you believed in that, the math, meaning the income versus the investment, you're relatively central, right? Your assets are regional. They're not like in 6 states.
We're all 500 units are within 45 minutes of where we live.
Okay.
Wow.
That helps, right? Doesn't that help? Now
Yeah.
go ahead and tell us why Peoria was unnoticed, but now it's noticed. And how did you figure that out?
So at the last Go Abundance event, Matt King was talking about recognizing patterns.
Yeah.
And so I would say what was so different for Mike and I is we recognized the patterns that were happening all across the country when it came to COVID and the demand for housing. And what ended up happening was people started looking at Peoria as a place to live because it was so much more affordable. So we had people from the East Coast, people from the West Coast move into Peoria. We had the demand for rentals just becoming stronger and stronger and stronger.
Yeah.
And we were some of the first people in the Peoria area that started increasing our rental rates on our apartments. And as soon as we saw that people were saying yes to that, we were increasing $100 a month, $150 a month, $200 a month. Then we realized that the $40,000 per unit that everybody used to pay for apartments in Peoria, that was good now. But if we acquired as much as we could at that $40,000 unit now, it was going to be really, really great later.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's when we started doubling down. It was we bought the first building in 2020. And then a year later, we sold it for a really good profit. And then we 1031 exchanged from 24 units into 138. And we just kept growing from there.
You know what? Wow. John, can I ask him to dig in?
Yeah.
Brad, dig in again. That is not always the way I hear it. Now, but it sounds like you didn't use syndicated capital. You used bank debt and your own capital.
Yeah.
So you're nimble investment owners. You don't have the long promise or whatever. Why didn't you just keep that first one and refi it?
That's a good question. Initially,
why don't you explain? Forgive me again. I don't know where everyone's coming into the show. Can you explain what I just asked and what you did? What's the difference?
Yeah, so we bought an apartment building, and I guess right at 12 months later, 15 months later, we sold it for a 50% profit. Wow. And so Josh's question was, why did we sell it instead of just refinance and pull our capital back out? And the unfortunate thing is there's no way that we could have refinanced the property with the valuation that we sold it for.
Okay.
Because no appraiser would have agreed to that. It hadn't started happening yet. And so when we put a crazy high price tag on something that we didn't even really think it should sell for that much at the time, and somebody said yes, then that was our reason, or gave us the ability to recapture more capital than we ever could have with a refinance.
Yeah. And I want to take that a step further for our listeners, where let's say if you bought this apartment building for $200,000, I'm using fake numbers here, but if it's $200,000, you only have to come up with $40,000, 20%. Some lenders will be 25, but let's say 20%. So you'd come up with $40,000 plus the closing costs. If you turn around and sell that in a year and a half for, let's say, $500,000, you're getting your initial investment, the 45 back, plus you're getting another 300,000. So now you've, let's say, $350,000, and you can play with that money to do 20% down and trade up in a massive way, the way you did, right?
Yeah, and since we're on the capital hacking podcast, we need to take it a step further. we negotiated some seller financing. So
Yahoo!
that's right. So when we
Holy
bought this
grail of
apartment building,
negotiating.
yeah. So we negotiated $250,000 worth of seller financing on a $1 million purchase. And the
Oh
seller
wow.
financing was not tied to the real estate.
Okay, now, whoa, dude, hold on.
Yes.
That is next level.
Yeah.
Okay, go ahead and explain it and then
Yeah.
go deeper as to why that helped your bank.
Okay. So we bought this building for $1 million. We had $250,000 for the seller financing. We still have never been able to get a bank to count that as 100% of the down payment, but the bank only required us to put 5% down because
What?
we had the seller financing.
Wow.
Yeah.
Ugh,
So we bought the
incredible.
building with 5% down. And most importantly, the seller financing was not tied to the real estate. So when we sold it a year later, we were able to sell it, capture all of our gains. We still have the seller financing in effect today because that's what the contract says. It was just personally guaranteed by myself and my
Oh,
business partner.
wow.
And I think it's locked in at 4.5% because if you remember
Whoa.
interest rates back then, yeah. So it's been a beautiful thing. The gift that keeps on giving, guys.
Ladies and gentlemen, that was worth the price of admission for our show today.
Yeah, let's talk about it though. But in the conversation with that seller, how did you get them not to put it as a second lien on the building? So let's go back, Mr. and Mrs. First time listener. One of the best parts about these shows is you do get to hear a real deal. Brad's describing a real deal, but you also get to hear the normal way. Let's talk about plain vanilla, $1 million building. Let's say $250,000 down payment, probably more. Most banks today might be 300, 350 because it's like maybe like 65% leverage today. But you were able to get the seller to say, I'll keep $250,000 and you pay me monthly. But 9 times out of 10, they'll say, and we want it registered against the building on title like a mortgage. That's like the normal way their mind is going to work. And their lawyer is going to say that if they have one, they're going to say, oh, we want that in second position or whatever, and we want protections. How did it go that wasn't a hurdle, a barrier?
We don't know because I mean, you ask for whatever you can ask for, and you hope they say yes. And usually they come back and they say, yeah, we'll do this, but in this scenario, there were no buts.
Okay.
And so all I can say is that this was a second generation purchase, if you follow me.
So
their
not the
parents
one that built the business.
exactly.
The
So
child.
their parents built the apartment complex. They inherited it. So
Right.
to a degree, they probably didn't need it as much. So they weren't
Right.
as worried about not getting it. But yeah, they didn't ask us to. We would have, but we didn't have to.
Hi, this is Melanie McCallan. Josh and I are just so grateful for the many investors who have already joined us at Accountable Equity. Accountable Equity is so much more than a capital group. It's really a community of accredited investors that want to learn and grow together. I just want to personally invite you, if you want to find out more about this type of investment and see if it's right for you and your family, please visit us at accountableequity.com.
Hey, it's Hal Elrod, author of The Miracle Morning, and you're listening to Capital Hacking. Enjoy.
Sometimes you can get around this. What we've done, a nuance on this, just to teach for a minute. We've typically a bank won't like you to have a second mortgage. Sometimes they don't want and so that could be a good opportunity where you say the bank won't allow it. We're going to secure it a different way with a personal guarantee. That's the best scenario, Brad. What you did, because it's not even associated to the project. And in your case, you kept it even after the project was sold, which is crazy, which means that $250,000 loan, you then sold the building, but still have the loan because the loan became an asset to that family. It's called a promissory note and it pays monthly bills. So to them, they're like, as long as you keep paying the monthly bills, they are fine.
Mm-hmm.
There's a third way to do it that I've not seen much, but my lawyer taught me, and we've done it once and we'll do it again, is we secure it against our entities. So our LLCs, carried interest entity or whatever, GP, general partnership entity, will take the note, right? And so then it's not on the real estate, which makes the bank happy. Now, it means we can't take any money out of the business till we pay them. Yes, they are secure, but they're not on the real estate, which really upsets banks sometimes.
Yeah, sometimes. We've never done that.
So, Brad, I want to pivot a little bit, if that's all right with you, Josh, on this Ironman's Prayer Lunch. So how did that come about?
Yeah, so Ironman Prayer Lunch came about after Midwest REI. So I started a real estate investors meetup, training people how to do what we do. Mike and I both wanted to give back to the community, teach people how to invest in real estate. And it just brought the entire community together, which also helped us get to know other people that owned apartment complexes and who the players were in town. And so after we've been doing that for about 3 years, I switched from one small group to the other because our small group leader was our the pastor at our church, and he retired. And so we got put into this new small group, and he said, "Okay, guys, you've been sitting at the feet of the pastor of the church for 7 years. You've learned all you need to learn. Now it's time to go and make disciples. What are you going to do?" And so he had us go through a spiritual gifts assessment, one by one, all the way around the room. We spent months going through this for each couple. And then at the end, he challenged us to come up with our BHAG, our big, hairy, audacious goal in relation to our spiritual gifts. What are you going to do with those gifts that you've been given to further the kingdom of God? And so after looking at the Midwest REI, the hospitality was one of the spiritual gifts I came up with. Administration was the other. And my third spiritual gift was giving. And so after looking at those three things and what I'd been doing with Midwest REI, spending time in prayer, I kept hearing from the Lord, like, you've been teaching all these people how to invest in real estate, how to create passive income, but why aren't you teaching them about me? And guys, it hit me right in the gut, right? Like, why have I not been thinking about teaching people about Jesus? And so that's when it started. And I started putting together all the concepts and how this was going to work. And you wouldn't believe how easily everything came together as soon as I decided to say yes to Jesus. The venue came together. My first speaker came together. My wife started working. She's a marketing genius, so she was working on the name of the group and what we were going to call it. And our very first Ironman Prayer Lunch, which was about 3 years ago, we had 180 men show up for it.
Wow.
And my mind was just blown.
Where did you host that?
So there's a venue here in town, the same place where I do Midwest REI, that its capacity is about 200. So at that point, my first thought was, where are we going to go from here? Because we had 180 on our first one. But it's a really great venue. And we have speakers come in once a month. And we have 40 different churches that are represented at each one of our lunches. So it's just bringing men of all kinds together to sharpen one another, just like it says in Psalm 27:17.
It's inspiring. As a matter of fact, it reminds us of a group called Halftime. I was sharing with John earlier last year. We got to go through a program led by Lloyd Reeb. It's this famous book Brad Buford wrote, and it's all about what are your gifts and what are you called to do with them, and how can you leave a legacy good for the others, good for other people. Sounds like you've been doing that. Congratulations, man. I'm really intrigued. I'm looking it up right now. And so how would you credit her marketing success to go from 0 attendees to over 200 in the first event? Was she some whiz on social media? Did you have a small group that said, I'll get 10 people each? What was your marketing technique? Because that's unheard of.
Yeah. So my wife and I are the same in the fact that we just love connecting with people. So, Midwest REI was another result of that. We had 80 people show up to the first one of those. And people know us, we know them. We love people love us. And it's just the fact that we put together an event that is going to bring Christian men together, and we put it out on social media. I talked about it at Midwest REI. We sent out text messages, made phone calls to all of our friends. The church that we go to is the largest church in town. And so we had good networks of people there as well through our small groups. And my wife runs the women's ministry at that same church. So when she was at the women's ministry, she told all the wives, "Hey, tell your husbands to come to this."
There it is, John.
Yeah.
Yes,
That's your capital hack right there, baby.
Yeah.
I like that.
If
Brad, you're very.
I have to go somewhere. I show up.
I know. Mom says, wife says. So, Brad, as we're wrapping here, I mean, sounds like you've built community more than once. The Midwest REI seems to be really interesting. In the world of teaching and being generous with your time in Midwest REI, do you also get private lenders from that, or how does it benefit your other operating businesses?
We find out about deals. So we've bought deals before that people bring to us because they know us through this group. We've partnered with some guys because of it. I've done some private lending to some people, some members of the group. But things happen organically and naturally, but I wouldn't say that there's a huge benefit. The biggest benefit is just knowing that you're helping other people and watching other people succeed after they start doing some of the things you're suggesting, and then they come back to you. It's the most rewarding thing.
What would be the curriculum, by the way? Is it 12? Is it one meeting a month? And how did you lay out the program?
Yeah, Midwest REI, we meet once a month. It's the second Tuesday of every month, and we have somebody come in and speak. We typically do a deal deep dive while we're there. I share something from my life personally about some real estate, whether it's goal setting or talking about some trends that we're seeing in the marketplace. I'll share something like that, and it's always podcast style. So I
Good.
sit up in the front with them so that I can control. We learned early on after some people went off the rails that I needed to have some control up there. And then Ironman Prayer Lunch is 6 times a year. So we take summer and winter off. We do 3 in the spring, 3 in the fall. And we typically have preachers. And so I don't have to do podcast style there. They're professionals. That's what they do. And you give them 30 minutes, they'll stick to it and deliver an amazing message.
It's incredible.
Well done, buddy.
Yeah. So where can our listeners follow up if they have questions and want to connect?
Yeah, so you can find me on Facebook. Very easy. Midwest REI Peoria is our Facebook page. And then IronmanPeoria.com is our website for the Ironman Prayer Lunch.
Brad, thank you so much, buddy. We can't wait to have you back on here.
Thanks, guys. It was a pleasure.
Damn straight. We just got
buddy.
We got to the end of another great show. And everyone listening right now, you're the family and friends. Thanks for staying till the end.
That was so fun. And hey, hit the like, hit subscribe. We're here to serve you guys. That's why we're doing this show. Josh is not paying me. I'm doing this off of my quote unquote sweat equity because we want to make a difference in your life. And then that ripple effect will continue to touch the world.
Hey, amen, brother. Please check us out on capitalhacking.com, all the social media threads. And yes, I know you've probably already sent this episode to one of your best friends. Thank you. We love you. Just go right into your iPhone, hit the plus symbol. We'll talk to you later. See you next week.
Share.